Welcome to Fox Encounter. I am your host, Fox. Please consider taking a few seconds to subscribe, drop a like on the video, and share it with your friends. Stay tuned for more content and enjoy the episode.
My grandmother, my mom and I were walking around Chicago downtown. My grandmother sees all these people pulling up, to the theater. And she's like, okay, let's see what's going on in here. It's the Phantom of the Opera. She's like, okay, let's go and watch it. And it still to this day is one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite musicals. Just because of that experience that was important, but because it really is a beautifully crafted musical, and it exposed me to opera. I understand opera to some people is just like loud, vibrato and loud, over the top singing, but there's something about it that I connected with. And then I also love classical music. So those are not things that, and of course, as a kid, there were things I liked that were, natural to children. But then I also love to watch Nick at Night and old shows like I Love Lucy and Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie and Laverne and Shirley. Like, it just was something about what I connected to. And I think that's what shaped my appreciation for certain types of films and certain types of TV shows, because I see the value in not just in what has come before us, but just like everything that has shaped, like the industry that we see now. And sometimes that's what I find interesting. Like Babylon, I had some issues with it, but what I thought was cool was it took us back to the 1920s and showed this is how crazy and chaotic filmmaking was. We had to go through all of this, and all this stuff was happening on all these sets at the same time. And so I just think I was given the opportunity, which I'm very thankful for, by so many adults in my life. I was given the opportunity to learn and pursue knowledge and be reinforced in that. There was no one really saying like, what is this? And you don't do that. I really had family who were just like, go for it, do it. And here's this, and take this stack of books. And like, they really pushed me to where I am now. And like I said, even when I got older, it was a challenge because that was not the norm in that particular community. But I kind of learned the value in being who I was and embracing the things. And of course, I had to get on code. So I also knew how to dress a certain way and get into the baggy stuff, Fat Farm, Rockaware. I mean, some of that stuff was, I remember all that. Fubu,
oh man,
and it helped in a sense. I mean, I did like some of that stuff, so it's not like I was being forced to wear something I didn't want to wear. But it was a balance of, okay, so I know how to kind of move within these spaces one way, but I also know how to still hold on to the things that make me who I am, even if they aren't mainstream and they aren't the norm. And when it comes to my channel, one thing I want to make sure I do more of is, because I've always wanted to do that, but like I said, building a channel, it's almost like you have to lean into things that are popular just for the traction and for the engagement. And I feel like what I ultimately want to do is highlight the hidden gems and highlight all the films that deserve attention, but don't, get enough, or TV shows too. So that's why, like, one of my highest performing videos, it might be second, I just happened to look. The Cook of Castamar. It's a Spanish language series on Netflix. Not only do I objectively think that that's a good review as far as what I had to say about it, but I like that it was a show that a lot of people had not seen or didn't really know anything about. And the fact that I get comments still today, people saying like, oh my gosh, I didn't think anyone knew about this show and I loved it and no one was really talking about, I love that also. So I'm trying to work on finding the balance between things that I enjoy that may happen to be mainstream or popular, but also like what I did with The Outfit or Vengeance or, You Won't Be Alone, all these other films, and a lot of the films on my favorites list. There's a lot out there. So I never want to get boxed in, like you said.
Oh, if someone says, oh, you shouldn't be skateboarding because, you only like white kids skateboard, I'm like, oh, cool, bet. Then I guess I'll be the only person around here doing it then. So that like would always make me want to do stuff even more when someone was like, oh, you shouldn't do that. It's like, oh, normally, they wouldn't do that. And I'm like, oh, cool, fine, then I guess I'll be the only one doing it.
Yeah. No, definitely, and it made me more aware of how dangerous it is to be socialized racially, because
Mhm.
there are these limitations that are imposed that we can easily grab hold on to. Like some people pick that stuff up and they literally say it in their minds that, I'm just using a random example. Black people don't go to Aspen, or oh, I just saw I watch a lot of old school sitcoms in general and some black. And I was watching an episode where there was a lawyer and she was talking about this case that she had just won. And so it was about this guy who I guess that he was divorcing his wife, and she basically
Mhm.
made sure, like, I got this and I got this and I got all the stuff he tried to conceal, and she was, happy about her what she did with this case. And so one of the guys that was there, one of their friends, he was like, well, I feel sorry for the brother. And so she turns to him and she's like, Kyle, these people own a Winnebago. You should know they ain't black. And now here's the thing. I understand what she means by the joke because unfortunately, the Winnebago is something very specific, and the imagery would not speak to someone black having a Winnebago. But at the same time, you see imagine how differently that would have gone over if it was like the opposite. It was like, oh,
Mhm.
you do realize that's somebody black, right? And then the assumption was that it was someone white, and she had said like, oh, you do realize, but it's just that's the way we're socialized. We're taught to kind of code things according to certain races, and that's not how life actually is.
I'll do it because it's sometimes a conversation starter, and that's what I learned with my schooling. In I guess where that come from is when I was taking psychology classes in college, we also had like courses in in race and culture and stuff like that. And my teacher, bless her heart, was like a middle-aged white lady from the South. So she was very like mousy about certain topics and discussing certain things because she didn't want to be offensive or anything like that. But I was like, girl, that's what we're here for. We're here to discuss and we're here to like debate these things. If we don't
Right.
talk about these things, then we're just gonna tiptoe around it. And I've never been that kind of person. Like I've never been, the type of person to just be like, let's just tiptoe around this subject. No, there are things that happen. There are things that happened. Um, like with my wife, she's white, and I'll make a lot of jokes too about like the past times and all this other stuff. But it's all in the fact that we're trying to get these discussions because if like I said, I don't personally don't like when people just try to like, oh, that happened, yeah, but let's just pretend it didn't. It's like, no, how are we supposed to learn from things if we just kind of pretend it never happened?
Right.
But like, yeah, in that class, I was the one. I'm sure like everyone in that class probably thought I was like the most racist person on earth, or like the most like homophobic person ever because I wanted to discuss these things, but everyone was just so scared to say something. So I would just say like the craziest and like sometimes a lot of wild stuff to get the conversation going because I'm like, well, why are we here if we're all scared to like talk about stuff? Like this makes no sense. Are we just gonna sit in this classroom for like an hour and just not say anything because we don't want to offend someone? People like to ask me about Native American stuff because it's fairly new in the grand scheme of like where we are now in terms of
Mm-hmm.
like culture and stuff like that and the
Yeah.
way people have been like I feel like right now like Native Americans are just still very new, I guess, to the like I guess like the world in a way because we're just now starting to get a lot of like the representation and people talk having the conversation around it. So I'll get a lot of people in my everyday life just kind of curious and ask about that stuff. But I can tell a lot of times too that they're scared to ask certain questions because of I guess I might take it offensively, but I'm like, no, you can ask me what you want because we can have fun. I feel like we can have fun with those things because it eases the tension and that's the good segue into that conversation.
Do you like saying that to throw in another example, I read the rough faced girl when I was younger, and it was kind of a, a kind of the native Cinderella, so to speak, but
Hmm.
it was very unique as far as the mythology that they used and the dynamics of the story. And I thought it was mesmerizing, and that's why I say that's another example of that kind of exposure. And also, my grandfather taking me to a powwow, and then me seeing what that experience was like. And so there were kind of like these little touches here and there where I began to kind of learn and see, like I said, see these other cultures and kind of make sense of it in a way, that was obviously different from my own experience. And it's so funny that you said that, because I remember when I did my community post, um, shout out for you. I remember when I was writing, and I don't know how I had written it before, because it's not like I completely flipped it around. But I remember when I said that, I appreciate how outspoken he is about Native community, and I think I said maybe like, and I hope that that's something that can be seen as important or valued. It's a specific way I worded that,
Hmm.
but I remember erasing, typing a couple of times, because I was like, because I was worried about making it sound. From what I remember, I feel like I was worried about if I said it one way, it would sound like it's not important, or if I said it another way, like it's not important enough, or like I was thinking about how can this be received. And I have little moments like that in general where I'm like, is this coming across right? But in the end, I know what I said was fine, because my whole point was, I think this is something that should be really mainstream. This is something that people
Hmm.
should know more about. And should be a history that is discussed and detailed and all that kind of stuff. And that was really more so what I was trying to get across. But I was worried that it wouldn't sound like that. But
Hmm.
um, but yeah, but I know what you mean, and it's weird because I can be outspoken, and it just kind of depends on the circumstance, because it depends on the situation, because I'm a very much um kind of choosing your battles. Like there are things
Hmm.
I can be vocal about and kind of go back and forth about, and other things I'm like, no, please. But yeah, when it comes to it's funny because when it comes to like my relationships with people, like my friendships and all that, I feel like I used to be a lot more kind of quiet, withdrawn, shy. I wasn't when I was like younger. It just kind of depends. Like there was a part of me that was very shy, but I would be very exuberant and just outwardly, animated and all that kind of stuff. And then certain things happened at a certain age, and that some of that stuff got diminished. And then it was kind of a process over time of working back up to that. And what I find now, because there are aspects of myself I really feel like I've grown and I've improved myself. And the problem is when you're not vocal and you don't know how to communicate, that is a breeding ground for passive aggression.
Hmm.
And I feel like there was a lot of that where I was projecting things but not saying them. And that was also because I feared conflict. I figured if we talk about it or if I say it, we're going to get into a fist fight. Like it's like 0 to 60. There was no thought that there would be a middle ground. I was too young. I just figured like, if this is going to escalate, we're going to scream, we're going to fight, we're going to end up on the 6 o'clock news. Like there was like, that was it. And now it's so funny because I'm very much a say how you feel, say what it is, let's
Hmm.
talk about it. I would rather, as extreme as it is, to say, I'm like, I'd rather someone just come out and say, like, hey, I don't like you because of X, Y, and Z. But please do not do this thing where you come around me and we're kind of like playing both sides, or you're on both sides of the fence. And I'm like, well, but this, I'm like,
She is as fake as press-on nails. Hey, baby girl.
either say it or shut up. And that's it. So yeah, so I totally understand. Like my whole view of how I feel, I communicate and what I have to say, it is changed also. And I would rather somebody just say it, whether I like it or not, or whether it's the appropriate thing to say, because once I know, I know. But I can't know what you don't tell.
And I get that. I'll probably cut this out, but like within within the community, I know there's a lot of people that don't like me, but they've never said it. But I know that they
Yeah.
do, so I just avoid these people. And but if it ever like, but I'm also like very vocal about the fact it's like, hey, I know you don't like me, and that's fine. I just don't like this whole like sneak stuff, like saying stuff behind each other's backs, because that's like
Yeah.
we're all grown ass adults. Like
Yep.
let's act like it. If you have an issue, that's fine. I'm not gonna like get upset about it. The whole community thing, there people are afraid to say those kinds of things because we're supposed to be a community. But then people for like don't I feel like people forget that we're all humans. We're not all gonna vibe. We're not all
Right.
gonna agree on stuff, and you may not like somebody for whatever reason. It really doesn't matter. But so if you guys just don't vibe, then I don't like the whole pretending that that everything's all hunky dory.
Yeah, I've seen it, and it was one of those things where it's it's hard to say because like I feel like I'm very discerning, and I can kind of pick up on really small things, and not all these things are things I can say I know for sure. I'm not just
Mm-hmm.
infallible, but there are just certain responses, or there are just certain ways people will respond to maybe one person versus the way they respond to me. There's a way that people will gravitate to certain people that they don't gravitate to me, and I think I think when I was younger, I used to think that meant something. That must be saying something about me when it really is
Mm-hmm.
more so a reflection of the person. And it doesn't always have to mean it's a reflection of something negative sometimes, but it can just simply be that whatever space you're in, or the way that you've been brought up, or the way you see certain people. I don't even mean like racial or anything like that. It's just that you are used to a certain type of person, you connect to a certain type of person.
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't fall into, that lane for you, then that's just life. Because I know that even if we're talking about the whole YouTube thing, I'm sure the fact that I don't the majority of what I talk about is not black. I'm sure that some people avoid me like the plague, which, mind you, is not to say that there is not value in those stories, and like it has nothing to do with that. It just so like because I really when I started, I feel like that was the kind of the bulk or a good amount of what I did, and I'll still do it. But just because it's not every single review doesn't mean that I don't have an appreciation for black storytelling, because that's my foundation, and there are so many black films that I think are hidden gems and need to be seen and celebrated by so many people. But we
Mm-hmm.
know the what we know, but we also know why that's why that's complicated. And then I'm sure some people feel like period pieces, Bridgerton, what?
This is whack. I can't get jiggy with this shit.
Like I'm like there are so many different things that I can kind of pinpoint to kind of like I guess highlight why people don't gravitate, or and it's hard to explain, but I know like if I'm on a certain live stream, or if I'm on in a certain comment section, or like it's just there are little things I've been able to kind of see and detect where it's like who follows who after the live stream, or who has something to say to who after the live stream, or little things like uh someone saying they enjoyed my energy on a live stream, what's up, brother, with this emoji. And I'm like, oh, now would you have said that if I did not look the way that I did? I mean, I have a feeling, and I actually said this to one of my friends. I was like, why do I feel like if I looked different, I just don't feel like he would come to me saying like, hey, old buddy, old pal. Like, I don't think that would be and of course I'm using something very specific, but I'm like, I don't think you would present yourself that way. So why is it you feel the need to use that word and that emoji with that shade?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So yeah, I've learned to just I make peace with it. It's not always the most fun thing, but it's nothing I'm gonna get hung up over. And for me, I'm in the space. Not that bad things have happened, but I think I was
Mm-hmm.
for a long time, I was, who's next, and who else am I going to get to know, and who else am I going to connect with? And now I'm kind of like, I'm not saying no new friends. I'm kind of saying no new friends, but I'm kind of like, if you are going to kind of come in with I'll say this because I told one of my friends this about, because this is how I feel about friendship in general and just relationships with people. I feel like if you are going to get aboard the train and you're willing to take the ride and you're willing to hang in there, then we're good. But if you're not, then you can get the boot and you can go on about your business and the train will keep on going. And it's the same thing when it came down to college. There are a lot of days, I had a lot of good friends. There are a lot of days where I realized just how much I valued my alone time and being independent and venturing out, taking a walk, because people would do this thing. And of course, it's college. So you get used to social groups. You get people will go to the club, they go to the residence hall, they go to the dining hall, their library. I get it. But I realized that there were people who would just sit in their dorm because they didn't have someone to go with them to do something. And I was like, oh no, like that's not how this works for me. And so I would literally go like blocks away from the campus, and I would go sit in a Wendy's and I would watch Mad Men, or I would watch Once Upon a Time. I would hop on the shuttle and go to the mall and go to, the Chinese restaurant. I would watch, I don't know, Gotham or something like that. But it was very important for me to carve out time where I felt like, it sounds silly, but it felt like I was going on a journey, because you get stuck on campus and you become used to that world. And it's like, even if I go down just a few blocks, that it's like a journey. I'm venturing out, I'm getting away. And it was so peaceful when I had the opportunity to do that. And so I really value my time away from people when I can. I still appreciate people. And like I said, anyone who really wants to connect with me and be a good friend, I feel, again, objectively speaking, I feel like I'm a great friend because I genuinely want to support people, because I genuinely want to see people do well and be their best selves and do the things that they're scared to do. And, I will give, as I always say, I will give you my Papa Bear speech and keep on trucking, I'm here to give what I can, but if it is not for you, then it's just simply not for you. And I would rather give that to the people who are willing to receive that and continue to have great experiences with me, whether it's through a screen or whether it's in person, whether we meet eventually or not. I'm here to still be a supportive person and try to cultivate a life that is reflective of community and positivity and support.